All right, well, it is 8 o'clock. Welcome to the first in the SSP New Mexico Tech 2022 guest lecture series. A longstanding SSP tradition is to have one of the observing teams introduce the guest speaker. So I'm here to introduce the introducers, of course. And then that's all I'm going to say. Why don't you guys come up and talk into the mic. And look at the camera there.
Hi, I'm Eugen.
I'm David.
And I'm Olivia.
And we're going to introduce our first guest speaker for SSP 2022. So our guest speaker today is Dr. Derek Muller. He has a Bachelor's of Science in Engineering Physics from Queen's University in Canada and a PhD in Physics Education Research at the University of Sydney, focusing on designing effective multimedia for physics education.
He's also the creator of the YouTube channel Veritasium, and he does videos on science education and more. He started in 2011 and now has over 12 million subscribers and 1.7 billion views. And he was the winner of the Streamy Award for Science and Education in 2017.
Apart from that, he's also been a host of the Australian science program Catalyst. He has appeared as a correspondent on Bill Nye Saves the World, and he also co-hosted the March for Science in 2017. So he's really cool.
All right, thank you. I'm going to mute this mic for now. We'll listen to our speaker. And once we get towards the Q&A, that's why I have my laptop set up. So what we do is you could actually come up and ask the question so you could, see your pretty faces, and then I'll leave this mic over here. You can talk into that, ask your question, then come sit back down and listen to the answer. That sounds okay with you, Dr. Muller?
Yes, that sounds perfect.
All right. So it's all yours. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for having me today to speak to you. I come to you from a room that we're cleaning out. We're currently in Sydney in Australia, and we are fairly certain that we're going to move back to Los Angeles in about a week. So things are hectic here. I have 3 young kids who are aged 2, 4, and 6. So if you hear them screaming, that's just how young kids are. So things are pretty hectic and frenetic. I think where I wanted to start with you is in talking about, the question I most commonly get asked, which is like, how did I become a YouTuber? And well, I think the answer is I always wanted to be someone creative. I always wanted to be involved in some sort of creative career, acting, directing, filmmaking, something like that. But that seemed like a terrible life choice, especially when I graduated high school in the year 2000. There was no social media, there was no YouTube. So clearly like this path didn't exist yet. And I think about that for young people coming up, which is, which career paths are not yet available to you. But for me, it felt like I was good academically. I had a strong academic record, and it seemed like a poor life choice to try to pursue a career in film or theater or something like that, where I felt it's not necessarily a meritocracy. Like I would back myself that I could be a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer. I can study those things, but the idea of being someone in a creative field felt much harder, much more like you're leaving your life in the hands of other people and just sort of up to luck. So I went to Queen's University in Canada, and I studied engineering physics. Of course, I love science. There's a deep love of science in me, and I also love teaching. So I've been doing that since sort of high school, and when I was in college as well, just sort of like tutoring friends or things like that. Like it was just always something I enjoyed. When I finished college, I moved to Australia ostensibly so I could go to like film school, which I thought would be sort of a stepping stone on the way to a creative career. But again, that felt a little bit too uncertain. So I ended up doing a PhD in the School of Physics at the University of Sydney. But I was trying to merge these passions in like I'm interested in physics and science, and I'm interested in filmmaking. So that's why I tried to make a PhD about how do you make films that actually teach people science and or physics. And I think I'm lucky that there's physics education research groups at the University of Sydney and around the world, which are looking at that question of like the unique challenges of teaching physics. So in hindsight, the PhD feels like it was a good springboard to lead me to this, but at the time, I didn't really feel like I was satisfying my interests to be either a creative person, a filmmaker, or a scientist or a researcher, because education research is a very different kind of area. So that didn't feel particularly great. And while I was doing that, I started working at a tutoring company. I was teaching and managing a science department. And once that was done, that became my full-time job for 3 years after the PhD. And then I got to a certain point in my life and I was like, I was like 27 or 28 years old. And I felt like I had been pursuing smart strategic choices ever since school, the idea to do engineering and then do a PhD and then work at this science, tutoring company. It all felt like I had been very strategic and things had worked out and I was not homeless, right? I think my biggest fear was, will I be able to support myself? Will I be able to have a comfortable lifestyle? And I had achieved that, but I'd also not done the things that I wanted to do and become sort of the person who I wanted to be. That's kind of where the idea for the name Veritasium came from. The word veritas, Latin for truth, and then adding IUM on the end to make it sound like an element, Veritasium, an element of truth. And for me, it was more than a YouTube channel. It was this idea that I should be pursuing the things that I would like to be in like my obituary, or what would you like to be on your tombstone? Or, when we're all gone, like what is the lasting legacy you want to make on the world? Like, would you like to run a tutoring company for your life, or would you like to make videos or films or that sort of thing? And for me, that question was clear. And at some point I had to make that leap. And so that's what 2011 was for me. It was just this big leaping off point, quitting working full time and starting making the YouTube channel full time. I guess the other thing I think is interesting and worth knowing is just how much practice everyone who's good at something has to do. By the time I started my YouTube channel, I had been making videos in various forms for 10 years. I made them with my friends in college, and I made them as part of my research during my PhD. And still, when I started my YouTube channel, the videos weren't very good. They weren't great for years. And even now I see ways to improve them. So for me, I think that's such an important thing to carry with you, is this idea of like everyone when they start kind of sucks at what they do. And the people who end up getting to a place where, they have some proficiency, it's because they have struggled typically through those early years and early hours of, attempts and practice and just trying to refine and find things that feel like they work and like they're good. So I wanted to take this time with you and hopefully do something more interactive than just have me talk to you. I would love to get some questions from you about the things that you want to know and insights that I can provide for you, and sort of what things are interesting. I'd love to make this sort of more of a conversation than just a one-way talk, because if it was a one-way talk, I'd rather just make you a video. So you have me in person in the flesh. So I see that there is a hand raised at the end of the front row there.
Yes.
So I'd be happy to jump into questions if you like. Otherwise, I can continue to ramble. You just let me know how you want to do it.
Hello, I'm a huge fan of your YouTube channel, but I did want to ask you, what is your favorite video that you've made, and would you care to elaborate on why?
Yeah,
Sorry, my name's Alan Ma, and I'm from Portland, Oregon.
Alan, it's nice to meet you. Look, picking a favorite video is a little bit like picking a favorite child. It is very, very, very hard. And, you know, over the last year, 2021 was the biggest year for the channel. So in a lot of ways, I feel good about a lot of the videos that we put out last year. Gödel's incompleteness theorem, right? The video on incompleteness is one that I'm quite proud of because of how much effort, blood, sweat, and tears went into that video to try to create something that I think is classic. I'm also kind of fond of the video on general relativity, which was called, you know, Why Gravity is Not a Force. And for me, you know, I had done a general relativity course, but I didn't get all the insights that I needed to make that video. So making that video forced me to sort of relearn general relativity. And I also think it's fun. Yeah, I mean, there's so many videos that like, you know, you're always really passionate about recent videos. I think the video that we did on lead earlier this year, lead poisoning, is one of my favorites because, again, you know, everything to make one of these videos, you have to learn a lot and you get to like delve deep into a subject. I think what I found out was that like research wasn't really for me. I didn't love doing research, and as a PhD student, that's what you do. It's a research degree. And what I found was the day-to-day activity of being a researcher is very hard for my personality because it's like it's somewhat tedious. It's a lot of sort of alone time, thinking time, reading time, and then like after 6 months or after a year, maybe your experiment doesn't work, or maybe everything comes to naught and it feels very potentially wasteful. The thing that I can say about, you know, video making is it lets me be a science student continually. And the thing that I was really good at was actually being a science student, not being a scientist. And there's a big difference. You know, if you're a science student, you're learning about things that are already known and finding ways to really understand them. So I get to be a science student all the time, deciphering things, figuring things out, and then turning that into a video and communicating, making films, being creative. And that's what I love doing. Alan, can I ask you what your favorite video is?
I would probably have to say it's the one between the shade ball series or the aerogel. I think the one.
Yeah.
Aerogel.
Yeah. I'm fond of those too. I go back and watch like the swimming in shade balls video, and I like how fun it is personally. Like, and I like the sort of different structure of things. Yeah. Every video is like a new battle for me. It's interesting, like some YouTubers come up with a formula and they just kind of like stick to it. Whereas I feel like I'm much more experimental, and that has pros and cons. The big con is that, you know, every time I go to make a video, it's like I'm figuring out how to make a video for the first time a little bit. I mean, not actually, but, you know, we don't have a really clear process or anything. Everything's a little bit haphazard. Everything's a little bit like, you know, maybe it's going to work, maybe it's not. It's nice to be formulaic, but then I don't like things that are too formulaic. So that's kind of one of the reasons why I resist formulas. Yeah. But aerogel and shape balls, that was a good period.
Yeah. Very cool. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thanks, Alan. So who is on the early observing team? Oh, you guys, yeah. So one of our teams is scheduled to start observing at 9 o'clock our time, and observing waits for no man. So wanted to make sure they got a chance first. And so Mateo, you have a question? And this, I realize you haven't seen the whole group. This is, everyone say hi.
Bye.
Hi.
Hello, everyone.
36 ridiculously smart and dedicated high school students doing the Earth asteroids for the summer. Yeah, take your mask off, introduce yourself, ask a question. You tell who you are.
Hi, Dr. Muller. I'm Mateo and I'm from Illinois. You explained a lot about how you were interested in filmmaking and creating all these videos, but I want to hear more about what really got you interested in science and particularly physics. What are some of the early memories that helped you realize that you wanted to focus on that?
That's a really good question. For me, I think science answered a lot of questions in a really satisfying way. For me, science is particularly satisfying. Like, I think all of us, our brains are there to kind of model our worlds and help us engage with the world in like productive ways, so we don't get hurt, and so we can find food and friends and all that sort of stuff, and make predictions about what's going to happen. For me, science is the quintessential way of understanding that, right? I love how many things in science are counterintuitive. I love the way it's like the world is not necessarily the way it looks. And also, we are prone to certain biases that make us see things in a way that we want to see them, but they're not. That's not actually how they work. So science is that constant reminder to think like, but is that really true? And how do I know? And how would I know if this is false? I find that line of thinking is particularly appealing to me. It's a line of thinking that I think occurs within me somewhat naturally. So I think that's the thing that made me fascinated about science, was like, it's so counterintuitive, it's so powerful, it reveals so much about the world, allows us to make these great predictions, can also be beautiful or powerful. You think of the ways that our lives are different now than they were 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago. And most of those differences have to do with like figuring things out scientifically and then implementing ideas through technology. So I don't know. It's in a way, it's hard for me to say like, why do I love science or how did I get into it? Because it just feels like the water I swim in a little bit. Like it's always there. It's always been there. And it's so amazing. It's like the key thing that makes humans progress and become more powerful and exert more control over their environment. And yeah, we're working on a video right now about the development, in the early 1900s that allowed the Earth to support 8 billion people, where, without certain scientific inventions, it could only support 2 billion people. So yes, not 2. So yeah, science has made this possible. Science has made these conversations possible, right? So yeah, I mean, science is so transformative and so important to what it is to be a human and to understand the universe that we live in, to make predictions about the future. I mean, there's all the practical side of things, and then there's just the sort of awe and beauty and amazement side, which I'm also very fond of. So yeah, I don't know. I hope that answers your question.
That's perfectly. Thank you.
This side of the room, is there a question? Ellie, come on up. Yeah. Mask, introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Ellie. I'm from Arkansas. And my question is, how do you think of the topics that you research for your videos? And also, what is the research process like?
Yeah, so coming up with topics is really important. And I think in the early days, I mean, the first plan that I had for the channel was that I would just start with like the simplest science idea. Everything's made up of atoms, and then work forward from there, go through bonding and particles and all that. Like that was the initial plan. But I soon found it was too hard to stick to that sort of, it was too rigid. So instead, I just like made videos about whatever was interesting to me at the time, or if I had access to an apparatus. I just happened to be giving a talk in Utah, and they said like, oh, we've got one of these like anechoic chambers where it's super quiet. And I was like, well, and I was like, well, I've heard this thing of like, you go crazy if you're in there for more than 45 minutes. Like that can't be true. So I want you guys to put me in there. And yeah, so like just random video ideas like would just come up in that way, or I'd read a book. One of my favorite books is Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow, because for me, it encapsulates so much about the brain and our cognitive biases. And those are often surprising because we think of our brains as reasonably rational, but it shows the systemic ways in which we're not rational. So I've pulled, at least 3 or 4 ideas out of that book. So yeah, from books, from places that I have access to, from scientists I know, from friends that talk to me. I'd often have friends say weird things to me. Like one day I was living in Sydney, and my housemate said to me like, hey, you know how you're heaviest, you weigh the most at night right before you go to bed, and then you weigh the least when you wake up? She said it like it was like common knowledge. Like everyone knows this. You're heavy at night before you go to bed, and then you're lightest in the morning when you wake up. And then I was like, well, how would that work? Like, how would you actually lose weight while you sleep? And why do people think this? And so that led to a video where I went out on the street and just asked people that question, like, when do you think you're the lightest? When do you think that you're the heaviest? And then I did the experiment and checked how much weight I lost every night. Can I see a show of hands who has seen that video about are you lightest in the morning or heaviest at night? Who's seen that video? So that's good. That's good. There's a lot of you who haven't seen that video. So I guess my question to people who haven't seen that video would be, how much weight do you think I lost every night?
This is, oh wait, sorry.
What?
Could I make a comment?
Go.
I've heard that you're actually taller in the morning.
You
So-
are in fact taller in the morning.
That's true.
I
Absolutely.
wonder if you tested that in your video. I haven't watched it, so.
I did not test my height. I didn't test my height, but I believe that it is definitely true that you're taller in the morning because of course gravity is compressing your body all throughout the day. So, the
That's
tiny
okay.
spacings
Okay.
get smaller. Yeah. So, I mean, it just, if you lay flat for 10 hours, you're probably taller than if you're standing or running or something for 10 hours. But I'd be curious to see, for those who haven't seen the video, I would just be curious to get some ideas on, if you weighed yourself at night right before you went to bed, and then first thing in the morning before you did anything else, get back on the scale and weigh yourself, what would be the weight difference from the night to the morning? I would just love to get some ideas, again, for people who haven't seen the video, because otherwise they might know the answer. Yeah, anyone have some guesses?
Yeah, just 2 pounds.
2 pounds?
Zero.
5 pounds.
5 pounds, 2 pounds, 0 pounds.
I'm hearing a lot between 0 and 5 pounds.
Between 0 and 5 pounds.
The 5 pounds sounds like way too much.
No, I think it's a few ounces.
If you look on the internet, you'll find people in forums claiming that they weigh 3 to 5 pounds lighter in the morning than they do at night when they go to bed.
Maybe their scales.
Maybe their scale's broken. Yeah, maybe it's not reliable. So what I can tell you is that to test this, I was staying at a hotel in Perth at the time. And I asked the hotel, like, do you have a scale that I could take to my room? And they were like, we have a scale, but it's the luggage scale. And you can't take it to your room. But if you want, you can come to the front desk whenever you want to use it and we'll bring it out for you. So I did this for 5 nights because I'm a scientist. I'm not just going to do one night. I did it every night for 5 nights in a row. Last thing before bed, weigh myself. First thing in the morning before you do anything. No going to the bathroom, no nothing. No drinking water in the night or anything like that. Just go back down, weigh yourself on the scale. And I got to tell you that the result I got every night was pretty consistent. So it only fluctuated by, 10% or something like that. The amount of weight I was losing every night. And the amount of weight, if you want to know the answer, how much weight do I lose overnight? The answer is half a pound. Half a pound.
I thought for sure you were about to say negative something.
No, I did not gain weight overnight. But I lost half a pound. So in a sense, I guess that's negative half a pound. But yeah, I didn't gain any weight. Yeah, but it was half a pound plus minus 10, 15%. So I guess then the question is, like, where did that mass go? Like, how did I lose weight overnight?
Dr. Rangstorff is raising his hands. Have you seen it?
No,
Oh, okay.
I would guess,
But can I get some ideas from the students? Or what do you,
Okay, you're allowed to answer.
what did he say?
He thinks like it's some sort of moisture.
moisture loss.
Yeah.
Moisture loss.
Perspiration, sweat evaporating.
Yeah.
Absolutely right. When you
Water.
when you breathe out, well, think about it. It's like it's about a cup of water. If you think about it, like 250 milliliters of water weighs about a pound. So roughly like a cup of water. So in other words, like when you wake up in the morning, if you drank a cup of water, you would weigh exactly the same as you did the night before. But in fact, I don't believe that all half pound was lost to water. I don't think the entire half pound was lost to water. So I'd love to get some other opinions on other ways that you could be losing weight during the night.
I like. Right. Like when you sleep, you burn energy and like you respire. So like the glucose turns into carbon dioxide and you breathe it out.
That's what I think you do.
Okay, so the thing is, what I was thinking was, why doesn't the same thing happen during the day? I mean, I know you drink water during the day. That's true, that's true. So if
So-
I just don't do anything during the day, I'll lose. Okay, yeah.
But to answer your question, Ellie, the same processes are happening during the day. So if you're just sitting there in that room and you're not consuming anything, you are getting lighter through two processes. It's interesting. I mean, the student who responded there has really hit the nail on the head. But what's fun for me is when I ask this question to more general audiences, I often get answers like, well, did you lose some dead skin cells overnight? And I'm like, look, if you're losing like 0.2 pounds of dead skin cells, like that's a problem. Other people will say like hair loss. And I'm like, look, again, 0.2 pounds of hair loss. People will say flatulence, right? Farts. Again, if you're losing 0.2 pounds farts, consult a medical professional. So yeah, the answer is I think you're losing about 0.3 of a pound to water, which could be sweated out or breathed out. And then you're losing 0.2 pounds of carbon, pure carbon. So the way this calculation goes is that every time you breathe in about half a liter of air. And at night while you're resting, it's typically 20 breaths per minute. And so this half a liter, 500 mils of air comes in. And then of that, about 125 mil, if I remember correctly, is O2. Now, 83.5 of that O2 goes in and just comes back out. Nothing happens. But 23.5, my numbers may not be adding up, but trust me on the 23.5. 23.5 milliliters goes in as O2 and comes out as CO2. So the only thing that's changed, right, is that little carbon atom. So I think of it like the oxygen comes in, goes down there, grabs a carbon and comes back out as CO2. And so you're losing 23.5 mils of CO2 per breath. And that's about 0.01 grams of carbon. But if you multiply by 20 breaths a minute, and then, 60 minutes, an hour, and 8 hours, you lose about 100 grams of carbon, pure carbon. And as I say, this happens at night, but it also happens in the day. But at least at night, nothing else is coming in or going out, so you can measure it. So anyway, that was one of the fun investigations. That's one of the fun things that I like to think about and talk about. I don't know how we got here, Ellie, but you just pushed a
I have
button
that effect on
and
people.
away I went. Sorry.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. This came from my friend, right? My friend was saying, yeah, you're heavy at night and lightest in the morning. I was like, that just doesn't make sense. Some people, by the way, say that the energy weighs something, right? Like E equals MC squared. And that's, I mean, it's crazy, but it's true, right? And if you do the calculation, your body's like a 100-watt light bulb. You're giving out 100 joules per second when you're resting, when you're sleeping. And if you convert all of that, it's like 3.6 million joules or something over the night. Sounds like a lot. You convert it into energy, and it's about something in 32 nanograms, I believe, is the amount. So not measurable on any scale, but true nonetheless. Yeah.
There another, Tia, you're on the early group.
I'm not.
You're not? Okay, then mine, I saw mine as first. I thought you were on the early group. And I do apologize for short circuiting the student interaction by blurting out moisture.
And no, it's quite all right.
Yeah. Hi, my name's Linus. And
Hi,
my
Linus.
question is, what is, in your opinion, what's the most like underrated subfield of science or like theory?
That is a very good question. And honestly, I don't know that I can give a great answer to this. The question that's most often asked, I think, related to this is sort of like, which field of science do I expect the most sort of developments are going to come in the next 10, 20 years? You know, I'm excited about what's happening in biology and the fact that we're really getting a hold of, you know, genetics, really. I think genetics is still in its infancy, and gene therapy, gene manipulation, it's clearly coming. Hopefully it has sort of profound implications for health and maybe reversing aging and things like that. All of those things I would be excited to see actually take place. There's also incredible stuff happening with regards to space science at the minute, and with, you know, private space companies, much more access to space, and hopefully to space travel and space exploration. So I'm excited about that as well. Let me try to think what else is out there. Yeah, I mean, in computing and AI, machine learning has definitely seen a massive, I've always been sort of very skeptical of what's going to come out of AI and machine learning, but definitely the last 7 years, I think, have shown this is really going to be way more game changing and probably way faster than people believe. We needed to reach an inflection point, but I think we're there, and I think things are really just taking off. So I don't know if these are necessarily underrated, but they're definitely areas of science where I think there's going to be some profound discoveries and changes to our way of life. Like I see, you know, the potential for a lot of revolutions in the way we live in the next sort of 20 years based on those technologies. Linus, are there particular areas of science that you think are underrated, or what do you like to look at?
Just talking to at a visit to Los Alamos, we talked to a astrobiologist, and I thought that was really interesting because whether there's alien life out there or not, it seems like looking into it is going to raise some really interesting questions.
Yeah, agreed, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it'll be fascinating to be alive at the time when maybe we find evidence of the first life outside of Earth, which I think is probably exists, might be on Mars, but might be somewhere else in Enceladus, or might be even further afield, but we may be able to detect signatures of it. So yeah, no, it's that's definitely a fascinating area as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Linus.
Tia, yeah, I'm sorry for short last time.
Hello,
Hello.
my name is Tia, and I was just wondering if there were any videos you've ever made that you had to cut short, or like you didn't get to elaborate on as much as you wanted. Are there any topics which you like wish you could have talked more about in your videos?
Yeah, I mean, this brings up an interesting sort of conundrum for a video creator, which is like, you know, you release something into the world and you hope that you have, like, in theory, my brain should be a simulator. It should be a simulator for like 5 million people, and it should predict what the people are going to say. Oh yeah, but what about this? Or they're going to ask this question, or they're going to want to know that, or at this moment they're going to think, oh, that's weird. So like I have to simulate all those people and then try to make a video that answers all their questions before they ask them. Sometimes the simulator runs pretty well, and sometimes the simulator doesn't work well at all. I think the best example of that was the recent video, the first video about the really long electric circuit. I don't know if you've seen, but like the half light year long circuit. And I think what happened with that video was sort of two things. One was like, I had an answer. I also thought the most interesting part of the video was this stuff around the pointing vector. And I didn't think we'd necessarily get all caught up on the thought experiment. But of course, everyone did get caught up on the thought experiment, and that became a whole thing. So that's where I say like the simulator didn't work very well. And I had a blind spot to what people were really going to want to know and what would be convincing for them. And then that led me to make the follow-up. So sometimes I do make follow-ups when I feel like just the first video clearly didn't answer the question as well as I thought it did, or answered the question that people weren't really asking. They were asking a different question. So I had to make a follow-up and do that. So definitely the light bulb one comes to mind for me. The other one that comes to mind is the wind cart, where you have this propeller driven downwind cart, right? And there was the first one where I thought, like, the explanation at the end, I thought was like, this is fairly clear. This is about as well as I can explain this. But probably didn't satisfy a lot of people, including some physicists who accused me of being wrong. And then I was like, okay, well, let's make a follow-up. Let's delve into this explanation again. Let's get it right. Let's be more convincing, and let's add more data and more explanation. So I think in the times when I really feel like I've missed the mark to deliver on something, I take another shot at it. So I guess that's what I aim to do. But yeah, I mean, in every video, there's always like, oh, there's something where I'm like, I didn't think that people were gonna get fixated on that or think that that's a problem. So I think one part of my process that I want to build in more, and we have been doing it more and more over the last year, which is really sharing the video with people, particularly on Patreon. We have this community of 4,000 people who will take a look at something beforehand, and then hopefully that will help my simulator in case there's a problem. They'll hopefully it'll get spotted there, and then we won't go live with it to a bunch of people. So I think it's really helpful to have a small test audience to sort of spot those things. I don't know, does this answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Oh, all right. Hello, Dr. Muller. My name is Evan Canis, and I am from Missouri. And I wanted to ask, how do you foster and strengthen relations with other scientists and video creators to enhance the content that you're creating?
Yeah, with other content creators, it's kind of easy. We've been lucky to meet up in person. One of the first conferences that I went to with YouTube creators happened in 2012 at a Canadian university called Waterloo. And it was sort of organized by Henry Reich, who makes Minute Physics. And he brought together a whole bunch of people, including like Vsauce and John Green, CGP Grey, Brady Heron, who makes like Numberphile, Vi Hart, who is doing math videos at the time. If you guys haven't seen Vi Hart, it's very good, but it's, from back in the day. So anyway, we all got together and like just being in that sort of setting, we became sort of fast friends, and we've been, friends ever since. And it's great to be able to reach out to them for the video that I'm launching in about like 8 to 10 hours or something. I called up Destin for Smarter Every Day, and I was like, can you just hop on a camera with me and we just talk about something? And then, he always gives me these great grabs where he's funny. He's also like, he's into the idea. He asks questions, and he expresses when he's confused or thinks something's awesome. And so he's just a great friend to be able to call on and then be able to throw that in the video. I think the YouTuber community is a really kind of inclusive community, and people are willing to help. So yeah, I think just about building those sort of friendships and relationships. Scientists these days are normally happy to talk to me. I think the idea of being able to share their research with a large audience, I think, is the biggest appeal. But definitely that took some time. I remember early on, I had an audience of 200,000 subscribers after about 2 years. And I tried to do a video that involved going to the zoo here in Sydney. And I emailed them, but they were like, well, look, if you're not broadcast, right? Like if you're not on TV, then we're not going to really make time for you. And I was like, it's like an audience of 200,000, like this is big. Eventually I tweeted at them, and a bunch of other people tweeted at them, and everyone was complaining. And eventually they let me in there. But I guess, yeah, a certain amount of social media clout can help with trying to get doors open. As I say, these days, most scientists are game to just jump in and do things. Because I think hopefully they trust me and trust the channel, and like that, I'm all about making clear, correct science content. And so, yeah, this is good opportunity for people to get the word out there. Have you ever tried to reach out to a researcher, Evan?
No, but maybe for the next school year, that's
The next which?
next school year.
Okay. The thing I would say about academics is that they're normally very open and available. They like to talk about their work. And what's great about academics is their emails are almost always online. So yeah, like finding ways to contact people is remarkably easy. The flip side of that is you have to make sure that the ask is reasonable. Because obviously these are also very busy people and they can't respond or just, you know, take a ton of time out. They're going to want to know that like you've done your homework and you know exactly, you know, what they're up to, and the ask is short and specific. I would say if ever there's a need to reach out to someone, one of the ways to improve your odds of getting a response is to be really clear, which, you know, means as few sentences as you can, express explicitly what the ask is, and hopefully be able to express what's in it for them, because of course everyone's asking that question. I am constantly in the position now where I need more people to help me make Veritasium. Like for 10 years, it was largely a solo enterprise that I just did from wherever I was. But now, you know, I've hired a couple people and I'm desperate for people who can write, you know, popular science. It's really hard to find that. There's a few skills involved that people need. They need to be able to understand the science on a deep level. They need to be able to research and go really deep, and then sort of what's the word? Synthesize all that information. They need to be able to pick out what are the amazing bits and what bits are sort of like, yeah, okay, that's something, but we can ignore it, and sort of figure out how to construct a narrative arc that allows us to go from like, okay, what is the question or problem, through to like, you know, develop that idea and then resolve it by the end and have something that's really satisfying. Anyway, I guess what I'm saying is I struggle to find people who can help me do the things that I need done. I need editors, I need animators, I need writers and researchers, and I struggle to find those people. In a similar way, like, I think this is just a perspective you don't have as a student, but like a lot of people will be interested in getting help. So like researchers may be interested in getting help, but they want to know that you will bring help and not just take up their time and not provide anything useful. So I don't know, I think there's huge opportunities out there for people with skills and drive to pursue the things that they want to do, and to reach out to people who are already more established in the field and like work together to push everything forward. One of the useful things that happened to me when I was first starting on YouTube was, you know, I made a few videos, did some things, and then I snuck into a science awards dinner in Sydney. I knew someone and I got brought in as a +1 or whatever. So came to the science awards dinner in Sydney. And there I found the producer towards the end of the night. I think he'd had too many glasses of red wine. And I found this producer of the only science show on Australian television. This was the Catalyst science program. And I talked to him briefly and he gave me his card and I said, great. And then the next day I went home and I sent him an email and I was like, hey, met you like last night. You know, if you want to see, this is what I do. And I had like 3 links or something to my best videos, what I thought were my best videos at the time. And just sent that off to him. And I didn't hear anything for 3 weeks. And I didn't expect to hear anything, right? He's the producer of a science show. What does he care about this stupid YouTube guy? But after 3 weeks, I got a response back from him and he was like, these are great. When can you come in and we'll have a chat? So for me, that story really encapsulates this idea of like, it's really important to show that you can do things and show what you can do, and just have that at the ready, like have a portfolio of like, this is the research I've done, or this is the writing I've done, or this is the website I made, or robot, or whatever thing is your interest. And then when you find people who can give you an opportunity to, take your stuff to the next level, you're ready to show them, this is my competency. And they'll be saying, okay, well, that is something I'm looking for. And they'll sort of bring you in and help you move forward. So I don't know, this is a long rambly conversation about communicating with others, but yeah, that's sort of the best advice I can give is like, yeah, be prepared, have that portfolio, and sneak into places where you're going to meet people who you can sort of work with and sort
All
of
right.
advance your career.
That was-
Yeah.
That's good.
Hi, my name is Bess Hooper and I'm from Seattle. And I was
Say
wondering.
the first name again.
Bess, Bess.
Bess, got it. Okay.
Yes. And I was wondering, firstly, which topic or field do you feel is most misunderstood? And secondly, maybe a completely different topic, but which one do you think people should understand the most? Like, what do you think is most pertinent to our existence?
Geez, these are hard questions, Bess. I mean, let me take the second one first. Like, I think that there's sort of a fiction that most people live in, which is like thinking that their brains are rational and that the world is the way it appears and all that sort of stuff. I think there's a real lack of critical thinking for most people. There's a lack of understanding of like how to think scientifically. People are so prone to things like confirmation bias. Everyone's looking out to prove what they believe as opposed to disprove what they believe. So for me, that's the most important thing I wish everyone knew. I wish everyone stopped to ask themselves the question, how would I know if this were false? That's the question I wish everyone asked themselves all the time, because it's so powerful. There's a video I made years ago, and maybe this is one of my favorites. But initially it had the thumbnail and on it were 3 numbers, 2, 4, and 8. Who has seen that video? Can I see a show of hands? Who has seen the 2, 4, 8 video? Let's see. It's not too many of you, which again is good. It's keep that knowledge to yourself. I mean, this video was made 7 years ago, no, 8 years ago, probably. So Bess, let me ask you the question and put you on the spot in this terrible position, right? But we could play a little game where I give you 3 numbers and those 3 numbers obey a rule. And I want you to figure out what the rule is. But the way I want you to figure it out is I want you to propose your own set of 3 numbers, to which I will either say, yes, that follows my rule, or no, it doesn't follow my rule. Do you know this video?
Yeah, oh, no, I don't know the video, but I've played games like this, but they're language games. Like the green glass doors.
The green glass doors. I do not know the green glass doors.
You have to suggest an item to bring through the green glass doors and I'll tell you if you can bring it through. And so
Okay.
the whole game is to figure out the rule as to like why can you
Good.
do something certain not others?
Great. So do you want to play green glass door with me?
Sure.
You can manage the green glass doors and I'll try to break through them or something.
Okay,
Okay. A killer whale.
no.
I can't bring a killer whale.
Wait, do 1 word things.
One word things.
Yeah, yeah,
A whale.
no,
Ant.
no,
Cat.
no,
Hippopotamus.
yes.
Alligator.
Yes. Yes, yes. I think so.
Refrigerator.
No.
Kitchen sink. It has to be 1 word.
No,
No kitchen sinks. Bus.
no,
Potato.
was it potato?
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Justice.
No,
Hamster.
no.
Orangutan.
What was that?
Orangutan.
No.
Alaska.
Alaska? No. What was your guess?
Apple.
Guess was apple and the answer is yes.
Okay, yes, I got it. Okay.
What is it?
Well, I'll give you a hint. It has to do with the name, green glass door. Yes, you can bring a green inside.
You can what? Bring a what?
A green. Whatever it is, you can bring a green.
Can I bring a glass?
Yeah.
Can I bring a door? I still don't understand.
It has to do with, it's more of a kind of a quantitative thing. It has to do with the word itself, rather than the actual object it represents.
I was thinking that, but I thought I got a yes for hippopotamus. And
Yeah?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
So, but why?
Should I spell the trade secret?
Yeah.
Any word that has double letters in it. So
Okay.
green glass door, green has double E's, glass is double S's, and door is double L's.
Very nice.
I
Very
can bring
nice.
that inside. Yes, you could. I can bring myself inside.
All right, Bess. Well, I was gonna say, Bess, you have played my game. I want you to play I played your game. I want you to play my game.
All right.
So you understand how this goes. You're gonna propose your own set of 3 numbers. I'll tell you, yes, it follows my rule. No, it doesn't follow my rule. And then we'll talk about we'll talk about how it works out in the end. So the 3 numbers that I start you off with are the numbers 2, 4, 8.
Mhm.
So what 3 numbers would you like to propose?
6, 8, and 10.
6, 8, and 10. That does follow my rule. Yes.
Wait, what was the original set again? 2, 4,
The
8.
original set was 2, 2, 4, 8.
Okay, 10, 12, 14.
10, 12, 14 follows my rule.
14, 16, 18.
14, 16, 18 follows my rule.
20, 22, 24.
20, 22, 24, bingo.
Is it just like even numbers? Like,
It is not just even numbers.
But can you guess the numbers?
try them out of order.
Try out numbers or either numbers.
Okay, 23, 25, 27.
Follows the rule.
Out of order?
1, 2, 3.
Go
Go descending order. 3, 2, 1.
Does not.
Irrational numbers. Ooh. 9, 8, 7. 9, 7, 5.
How about 8?
7, 9, 8.
No.
Okay, so we have ascending numbers so far.
That's it.
That's it?
You're done. You're done. Numbers in ascending order. What I like about 248 is that it traps most people in this place of affirmative thinking, right? Like they think that the goal of the game is to follow the pattern. So most people will go 248, okay, 16, 32, 64. They'll just follow the pattern that they see, right? Very few people will flip it and try something that they think is wrong, right? The point of this game is really to get you to think how important, how useful is it to get a no? Because all the yeses you get actually add not a lot of information. It's only once you get a no that you have information. Green glass door was tricky for me because I wasn't necessarily, I wasn't thinking of a strategy. So I wasn't really thinking of what was yes and what was no. The thing about 248 is it forces people to think about getting a yes, when what they really should be thinking is how to get a no. So that's what I think people should be thinking more about is sort of the fears of confirmation bias and stuff like that. What was the other question you asked? You asked a first question and a second question.
The first one was, and I'm not sure if this is gonna be a different answer or the same, but which topic, science or otherwise, do you feel like is most misunderstood?
I think broadly, physics is incredibly misunderstood by the general public. And then all sorts of things are misunderstood. Like every smaller aspect is incredibly misunderstood. I think some things now are misunderstood because of, political reasons or, I don't know. There's all kinds of reasons why things are believed to be in a way different than they are. One of them is just like physics is super counterintuitive, which is remarkable. This goes to the fact that like a lot of people have this idea that you got to see it to believe it, where I think we can prove that in a number of cases, you need to believe it in order to see it. A key example of this, and one that comes to mind for me, is this video I did, again, years ago, like 10 years ago. I just took a ball down to the beach and I asked these two women to watch it as I let go and the ball fell to the ground. And so I asked them, like, how did the ball fall? Was it going the same speed the whole time, or did it speed up or slow down? I mean, what was it doing? And the answer both of them said was constant speed. It falls at the same speed the whole time. But look, acceleration is hard to see. You can't just look at a sports car. I mean, in certain cases you can, but in a lot of cases, I argue acceleration is something that we don't perceive. And so that makes it really difficult when you have an equation like F equals ma, if people can't see acceleration and what they can see is velocity. So then they substitute in their heads velocity for acceleration, becomes a big problem. So just fundamental issues with our perception, like how do you expect someone to understand what gravitational acceleration means if they can't see acceleration? Like it's one of those things where you really have to think it through and follow some sort of logical path before you can get to the answer. So I don't know. I guess one thing that's related to this is that there's a sort of a problem of expertise where physicists might say, oh, well, it's obvious that the ball accelerates as it falls, right? It's obvious to me. And so, you can make any sort of complex animation or illustration of this, and an expert will say, oh, that's beautiful, that's brilliant. People will, how could they watch this and not understand? The problem is if you don't have that expert mindset in the first place, then the visual is, again, meaningless and doesn't actually help anyone. So that's a constant thing that I think teachers need to think about, professors need to think about, and it's something I as a YouTuber need to think about, which is like, how do I present this in a way that makes sense to people who haven't seen it before, as opposed to presenting it in a way that makes sense to me now that I know it. So it's always about trying to, see things through the eyes of someone who doesn't have that prior knowledge.
Beginner's mind. Dr. Anderson, our math physics teacher, likes to talk about that a lot.
Say that again?
Our math physics teacher, Dr. Anderson, he always talks about the beginner's mind and how important it is to be able to see things through it.
There you go.
Which I, with the beginner's mind to linear algebra, really appreciate.
Beginner's mind for linear algebra, man. It's like, what are we doing here? What are we like? I still bring a beginner's. I don't know. I haven't. See, I did linear algebra in like second year, I think, maybe first year, second year. I can't remember. And I never used it. It was like eigenvectors, eigenvalues. What the heck are we talking about, guys? But anyway, maybe at some point I'll revisit it and then I'll learn it for the first time.
Yeah, you can always come here and practice astrophysics. We have been using it quite a lot.
Awesome. Okay, well, that's good. I'm glad to hear it's getting some use.
Yeah.
I feel like did not go into the right thing. As a YouTuber, you never have to manipulate matrices. Well, I almost never manipulate matrices. I'll say that.
Maybe I should become a YouTuber. SSP YouTube. All right.
Thanks, Bess.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Hello, I'm Amelia. I'm from Oregon, and my question is, what should somebody who's new to your channel, like me, watch first?
Oh, that's a great question. At the top of the YouTube channel, if you go to youtube.com/Veritasium, you'll see, I think it's not the first thing, but maybe it's near the top. It says, new here, try these. And so I would suggest that you go to that new here, try these zone and pick something that interests you. Is there a particular part of science or engineering or the world that interests you? If you said you had a passion or a fascination, sorry?
Astronomy or astrophysics.
Astronomy or astrophysics. So two of the videos that come to mind for me, which are sort of like not that popular, so like maybe you'll hate them too, but there's one about how a supernova helped us measure the expansion rate of the universe, so the Hubble tension. There's another video about like what actually expands in an expanding universe. There's another video called Misconceptions About the Universe, which is about general misconceptions surrounding like the Hubble sphere and things beyond our observable universe and whether we'll be able to see them. So I would suggest those are fun ones. I really like the video on general relativity, as I said, but like maybe I'm just biased, but that one's called Why Gravity's Not a Force, but does involve rocket ships and thought experiments and space exploration and stuff. So I don't know, those are ones that come to mind for me, but they're not the super popular ones. There's one on these black balls in LA Reservoir, which is the most popular, probably like 80 million views. And so if you want to go just by popularity, then you can try that one first. But yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, and enjoy.
Hello, Dr. Muller. I'm Louis here. I enjoy watching your videos, and even my math teacher shows them in class sometimes. So I had a question about your channel. So you have like these two fields that you enjoy, like film and science, and they kind of bring different things like to your channel. For example, like an entertaining aspect and a more informative aspect. So are there any challenges in like balancing these two and catering to your different audiences?
Yeah. I have a number of things to say about this. One thing to say is that like it's commonly perceived that art and science are in some ways really distinct, right? And they are. On the other hand, like, are they as different as they seem? I don't know. I made this video called like, now it's just called like My Life Story or something, which might be worth watching maybe. And Amelia, that might be, that was your name, right? Might be worth starting there if you want. But something I reflect on there is like, something I've always been really passionate about is like, what is true? Like, how is it actually? Like, I find some sort of strange sense of import when I was in the presence of this book at the Royal Society where Isaac Newton actually signed his name. Like, there was something about like, that's the actual paper and the actual ink that came out of the actual quill that was held in his hand as he probably put his hand on this piece of paper as he wrote his name, right? There was something about the actual item, which I found very powerful. In a similar way, I find science powerful because it's helping us understand the actual way the universe is. And I find film also powerful because like those were the photons from that time captured by this either film or a charge coupled device, later reproduced by a bunch of zeros and ones and stuff. It's like there's like a direct particle collision chain from like, the photons that are hitting my face to this camera to like, what you're seeing in that room, right? So it's just so like those sorts of things are so amazing to me. So in a way, like physics and science are not as far apart maybe as a lot of people might think. Because they both are about capturing what is true. The other thing I would say to you is that there's a guy who like makes the Dilbert comics, and he talks about like your talent stack, I believe is the way he expresses it. But it's kind of the idea of like, you may not be the most intelligent person in the world, and you may not be the best at math, or you may not be the tallest person or the fastest or whatever. But if you stack together different attributes in different areas, so for example, like quite capable at understanding science, quite conversant with people on the street, able to do deep research, able to make animations, able to edit a video, able to I don't know, practice video making, or build a YouTube channel that has 12 million subscribers. If you stack all those things together, at some point you end up with like a I'm 1 in 8 billion kind of ability. So I think this idea of being able to leverage talents from different areas of your life, or being able to span different fields, can allow you to uniquely define yourself as a person who is sort of capable of excelling in a field. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
I was a trumpet player as a kid. When I was in grade 7, I was playing the trumpet. But I was in this band in Vancouver in Canada, and then I was in this orchestra. One of the orchestras I was in had 13 trumpets in the orchestra. And so I switched to French horn. And then in the main band that I was in West Vancouver, there was no French horn. So I was like the one French horn instead of being, like one of 10 trumpets or one of 13 trumpets in the other orchestra. So I think this has always appealed to me, to be like uniquely useful, that being an important driving force, because putting yourself in that position gives you a lot of opportunity, a lot of, it feels worth doing, because no one else is doing it, and someone's got to fill that void. So I don't know. Does this answer your question, Lewis, or do we get? Is it Libby or Lewis?
It's Lewis.
Lewis. So I don't know. Did we get off track, or tell me if this is
maybe a little bit, but it's perfectly fine. It's a perfectly fine answer, anyway.
Well, do you want to reframe me? Where were we trying to get to?
I was asking a bit about more about the video production process, and like how those two fields kind of clash together during that. But
like I don't feel that they clash.
Yeah.
And like I say, like it fits my personality. If I were a researcher, I think that I would be frustrated a lot of the time, because the day-to-day activities of being a researcher, are more tedious. They're sort of slower, and maybe I don't learn as much novel stuff as I do as a video creator. What's great about being a video creator is like I can work on a project solid for 2 weeks or a month, and I can learn a whole bunch about a field. I can interview some people, and then I can write some stuff, and then I can make a video, and then I can push it out, and then I can move on with the next thing. So I think this allows me to employ a lot of the skills that I feel like are some of the things that I can do best. So understanding science, and then forming a coherent narrative, and then making a film out of it. I feel like those are things that I do pretty well. And yeah, I don't know. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it's ideal for your talent stuff.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's about finding a product market fit where you are the product. And it sort of it fits to do this. Thank you.
Dr. Muller, I do want to be mindful of your time. Are you good for another 20-ish minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Olivia.
Hi, so I'm Olivia. I'm from Florida. And my question to you is, of all the topics that you've covered, or maybe something that you've learned of but haven't covered, or a question that you have, what interests you the most?
It's such a tough question. One of the reasons why it's a tough question, like what interests you the most, we always sort of struggle to, you don't know what you don't know, I guess is the easiest way to put it. So I'm always being surprised and interested in all the new things I learn. And the old things that I have learned are still amazing, but because I've learned them, they've lost some of their sheen, because it's like, that's no longer novel to me. So I'm always interested in sort of new and exciting things. For me last year, I felt like I learned a lot more in the math sphere. Like the video, I don't know if you've seen it, about how imaginary numbers were created, like using the cubic equation. That was a bit of history and a bit of math that like I didn't know beforehand, and frankly I think is profound, and it's incredible and very, very interesting that like we invent this thing which seems impossible and doesn't come from geometry and doesn't come from the real world, but just comes from the manipulation of symbols that we've made. But then like it does an incredible job of explaining the real world. It's like, I don't know, it's just, I think of such a phenomenal thing. So that is so fascinating to me. As I've reflected a number of times in this call, you know, one of the things is just like, how do our brains work, or how do they systemically miswork, is fascinating to me. I mean, but like I'm in awe of everything, like the, you know, just the scale of the universe and the existence of life, and I don't know, like how miraculous it is that we're all on this rock. Like all of it is fascinating and interesting, and I feel like I'm interested in so much. Part of the challenge is figuring out how to narrow it down into, you know, what will we do next. I'm interested in topics that I think aren't understood well, and one of the topics that I keep coming back to with my team is like the topic of entropy. That's this topic that's just sort of hanging out there like a beach ball for me this year, which is like, yeah, I think it'd be cool if we could figure out a way to talk about that in a way that was meaningful to people, in a way that gave examples, in a way that was exciting. So I'd love to do that, but also I know that that's going to take a lot of like brain sweat, if you will, to like figure that out. But that's part of the job. So I don't know. Does this answer your question? I keep getting lost in my own rambles, but you tell me.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Ryan.
Okay, hi, it's nice to meet you. I have a few questions. So the first one is
your name Brian?
Ryan.
Ryan.
R-Y-A-N, yeah. So the first one is
One question.
Okay, one question. What's your favorite?
Ryan, where are you from?
The UK.
That's what it sounded like.
Big
Just
fan.
want to make
Big fan of-
want to make sure you weren't putting on that accent.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so what's your favorite interpretation of quantum mechanics?
Yeah, definitely many worlds. The many worlds interpretation. So if you haven't seen my video on that, definitely recommend checking it out. What's it called? I can't remember what it's called.
Like your video on like the
many worlds probably exist. Parallel. That's what it's called. Parallel universes probably exist. Here's why. Yeah, it's a good title.
Yeah, I like the one where you like had like an oil like bar thing, and like you have like a particle like bouncing on the wave.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's a fun one. That like a Bohm de Broglie sort of thing with the silicon oil bath. Yeah, that's cool. So like pilot wave theory is definitely cool, but for sheer elegance, I love the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, because it takes the Schrodinger equation and it says, this is it. This is quantum mechanics. And then like, the only thing that's weird is like, okay, well, why do we see the world the way it is? It's because we get entangled with certain parts of that wave function, but really all parts are there and all parts are in existence. And yes, like it does seem somewhat extraordinary and weird and all that, but like, I just love it. So I don't know. Many worlds is for me.
Yeah. Do you think there's any like proof of the many worlds? Or
it's hard.
Yeah.
Like at the minute there's not. I don't think there's at the minute you could decide between the interpretations, which is why they're all sort of valid interpretations. But I would say like from an elegance point of view, you know, ad hoc rules and stuff for measurement just don't sit right with me. The Copenhagen picture never sat well with me, and yeah, like maybe a pilot wave theory, but again, it's a little bit more, well, you have the particle and you have the wave, and like, why would we have both? And I don't know. There's no way to figure it out for now. Maybe at some point in the future, we'll get there.
Yeah, hopefully sometime in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
My pleasure.
Hi, my name is Andrew Tata, and I just want to start off saying I think you're like the coolest guy.
I appreciate you saying, and also let me say, I'm not the coolest guy, so I want to disabuse you of that notion. I'm extremely sort of, I don't know, ordinary, like another ordinary person. So just want you to know that.
I just wanted to ask, and I think what a lot of the questions like have in common with. I was just wondering, how do you maintain your curiosity and always constantly like asking questions and not falling into like that whole like expert mentality that oh I know everything and then and everything is. And I was just wondering also if you think that curiosity aspect is something you're like born with, or that's something you can like nurture and develop in somebody.
I think first of all, I would say, you know, people are born with particular personalities. Some people are bound to be more curious than others, but I also think it can be fostered. I think that's the same with any trait, which is like some people are just naturally going to be, and I also think that interests are going to be, they're going to be what they are, and then they can go one way or the other. You know, having 3 kids now, that gives me a unique perspective on like, what do these little people come into the world with? And very different personalities, very different things that they like doing or don't like doing. Very different ways of approaching things, or just things that appeal to them or whatever. So yeah, I think we're all born with some curiosity and some more than others. I also think that like one important personality trait is like your comfort with ambiguity. I think a lot of people are really uncomfortable with ambiguity. Like they'd rather have an answer, even if it's maybe wrong, instead of saying like, I don't know. You can even kind of see this in science, which is like, we will hold on to a theory, even if there's sort of problems, you don't throw out the theory until you have a new one. So it's kind of like in science, we do the same thing. It's like, well, we just sort of, we're thinking it's this, and then there's all sorts of little problems cropping up, and you're like, yeah, but it's still kind of like, nobody jumps off that ledge and is like, no, I disavow this, I'm waiting for something better. It's like you stay with it and you sort of follow that process through. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I've got a more tolerance for ambiguity than a lot of people. I also have more sort of type 2 thinking than most people. So if you haven't seen a video of mine called The Science of Thinking, I'd highly recommend looking at that one. Again, this is sort of Thinking Fast and Slow. Daniel Kahneman is where it's sort of inspired. But the idea that we have sort of two different ways of thinking. One is this very quick sort of automatic thinking, and the other is slow, deliberate, sort of conscious thinking. It's the person who we think we are in our brains. And I feel like I'm much more in that space usually, which allows me to be, I think, effective when I'm taking like science exams. But it also really slows me down in a lot of parts of life. One example I often give is like when I go to buy toothpaste, I can spend like half an hour in the toothpaste aisle because like, you know, this one's total, but that one's complete. And this one's got whitening. You know, like, what are you meant to do? Like, I'm trying to, but it's ridiculous. Like, I just need to get over that. So yeah, I don't know. What was the first part of your question? Remind me.
It was in essence whether you think that how do you constantly maintain being curious? Is there any like driving factors that help it?
I honestly think, I mean, like I have to for my job, otherwise I won't make money, right? But I think, you know, if you're curious now, you're always going to be curious, right? Like if you want to know more about the world and you're in that room, like there's never going to be a point in your life when I think you know it all. Maybe we come back to me in 10 years and I'll be like, no, I got it all now, man. No more curiosity. I get it all. But I highly suspect that, you know, this feeling that I have of like, you know, learning more about the world is just, it's sort of core to being a person, being human, and being sort of interested. So I think I'll always have it. And there's just such a vast amount to know out there. The more you learn, sort of the more you see how unknown everything is, or how little you know. You know, it's kind of like, you know, the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's this sort of U-shaped curve. So the idea is like, if people don't know a lot about something, they might think that they know a lot about it. So like when your knowledge is really low, you might think like, oh yeah, I've got most of this. And then as you start to learn more, you realize that you actually don't know very much. So you go down into this valley. But if you keep learning more and more and more, eventually you come up the other side of the valley and you realize that you do know a lot more about the field. So you eventually kind of become an expert. But yeah, it's this idea of like people who aren't experts and really know very little can think that they know almost as much as the experts do, but it's because of their lack of knowledge that they can't even perceive or grasp the volume of things that they just don't know. So it's sort of the idea that like, yeah, beginner's mind can sometimes, is often overconfident and just misperceives like what the whole endeavor is about. I think certain areas of science give me that feeling. And if you see politicians or pundits or people who are talking about like climate change, for example, that leads me to think that they're very much in a Dunning-Kruger kind of position where they think that their ignorance is almost as sort of valid or useful for this conversation as an expert's knowledge. Because they just have no concept of the scale at which scientists pursue these problems. And like people will say, well, there's uncertainty in cloud modeling. It's like, yes, there is, but there's also hundreds of cloud models and like thousands of like scientists who like, you know, they're combing over every cumulus cloud out there with their little toothpick, and you know, people have come to this confidence interval, you know, and like, how do you even come to a confidence? Like all that sort of stuff is just like out of their heads, and they can just like point at certain things and be like, oh, there's uncertainty here and here. Maybe it's not an issue. It's like, no, people like study just like the left antenna of the African dung beetle for 40 years. Like the amount of like, you know, I wish everyone had a sense of the depth of science and just what it means to be involved in scientific inquiry. Because I think, yeah, that would help people, you know, not experience that sort of Dunning-Kruger effect of being overconfident and thinking their knowledge is almost like that of an expert.
That's fascinating. Thank you so much, Sid.
My pleasure.
I think we have time for one more question. Dr. Muller, please give me an integer between 1 and 7.
Sorry, say again. Integer between 1 and 7?
Yes.
5.
Rohan. Our 5 questions. Don't trip over that.
Hi. Okay. My name is Rohan. I'm from San Diego in California, and my question is, when you think of an idea for a video, what's your, I would say, research process? Do you start with planning a hypothesis and then going to experiment from there, or do you start through maybe research papers that have already been developed on the idea, or reaching out to an expert or something like that?
Yeah, I would say like the process is normally what's been done on this topic already. So I probably go to YouTube and like watch all the YouTube videos that come up in the top, like about this topic. If we ever make a video about a topic, we want it to be the best on that topic. I want other YouTubers to be like, I'm not even going to touch that because Veritasum's already done it, you know? Once I finish it, I want it to be done. Like that's the ambition of the channel. So yeah, the first thing is definitely look and see what else is out there. And I want to see that there's an opening. I want to see that there's an opportunity to put something new out there that's not just like, oh yeah, 3 Blue 1 Brown has a great video on this. Like I can't touch that because that's too good. But yeah, as long as I see an opening, then the next place, like Wikipedia is a great first stop for research. And then from there, yeah, research papers and scientists. I think what we need to do better and what would help us is actually reaching out to researchers earlier and having those conversations earlier, because they can often just really accelerate where you're going with a project and really give you that sort of insight that maybe is not initially clear just from the resources on the internet. So I would say that's sort of a big way to go. I think there's also like an important thing, which is like, for each idea, for each thing that you could want to talk about, there are infinite different ways that you could make something. So our challenge is to figure out like, what is the most engaging way to tell that story? A great example of this is this video I made about how bicycles work and how steering works. And my friend Henry Reich had made this video years ago about his video was called How Bikes Work, I think. And it's a great video and it goes through it very quickly, very clearly, like, you know, he's really nailed the material. But for a YouTube audience, you need like maybe something else, which is where we came up with this idea of like a stunt bike where you can lock out steering to one side and then see like, can you still ride this bike? If we lock out the steering to the left-hand side, like, can you still turn right? Because you can turn the handlebars to the right, can you still go right? And then we have like something that's more fun kind of for YouTube to get people in. And then we go through the science from there. So yeah, it's often about not just like, what do you want to teach? What do you want to investigate? But like, what is the right angle? What is the right sort of hook? They'll get people in the door. And then while they're there, they'll be like, oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting. So yeah, I'd say that's kind of the process.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Very quickly, what's one thing that what Brown has done that you will not touch?
I'm not going to touch Fourier transforms because he's really killed it. But I'm thinking about touching fast Fourier transforms. So we'll see. But again, I got to find my way into it and figure it out and all that. But yeah.
Well, I wanted to thank you for spending the evening with us. Really appreciate you doing this, especially in the midst of an intercontinental move.
My pleasure.
And I wanted all of our participants to thank our speaker.
Thank
you. Thank you.
Thanks again. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'm not even sure what time it is there.
Yeah, it's about 1:30. So
okay. Yeah. Thanks again. And,
my pleasure. Great to meet you all. Thanks for all the great questions. Yep. And yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
Goodbye.